So today we're going to debate whether or not children should be allowed to play M-rated games. Games that have a lot of graphic violence, blood, stuff like that. I mean, legally, there really isn't like any type of legal framework that says, oh, the children are banned from playing those games, and if parents let their kids play them, then there are going to be some legal consequences. Nothing like that. It's all pretty much up to parental discretion. Although if you go to GameStop and you try to buy an M-rated game, if you're under 17, you can't buy one, which is just like, it's just so weird. Like, there's such a huge difference between a 16 and a 17-year-old that yeah, the 16-year-old can't play the game. That's dumb. Really is dumb. And that was something that I had to deal with. Like, it was so awkward having to go to the mall with my mom in order to buy a game when I was older. Although by the time I was like 15, 16 years old, gaming was mostly digital already. So I guess I didn't really have to deal with that too much. But here's the thing. If I was a parent and if I had like a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old kid and they wanted to play, I don't know, Resident Evil or something, even Manhunt, that's fine with me. I don't give a shit. Like, they can play whatever they want, whenever they want, as long as they get their homework done or whatever. Like, I don't really give a shit. So maybe that means I would make a bad parent. I don't know. But I honestly never saw the big deal with kids playing games that are violent. Like, yeah, I mean, there is violence in the real world, and you know, you're trying to shield them from the real world, essentially, even though video games are not the real world. But violence and these awful graphic, you know, things, these awful depictions, these are things that do happen in the real world, and trying to shield children from that up into a certain age, I mean, it's also a video game. It's not real. So that's the other aspect of it, is like, at the end of the day, you're not really killing people. You're not really doing all these things. I find it funny how a lot of people, even parents that are gamers or were gamers, would always, like, you know, go up against people who would stereotype video games as like causing violence. Like, remember the whole Columbine thing that happened 25 years ago? That's when all those conversations started about how video games kind of can have a bad influence on the kids and make them do some awful things that they otherwise wouldn't do. It's weird how, like, the general consensus, especially like in modern society, I mean, you're gonna have some out of touch people that still believe that, but the vast majority of people think, like, yeah, that's just dumb. But there are a lot of people that do believe that, and at the same time think that somehow allowing your kid to play these types of games at a young age is going to somehow cause damage to them long term. Like, I just don't understand why anyone would have an objection to their kids playing whatever games that they want to play. Growing up, I didn't really have a lot of rules that were against me. I did have a bedtime, you know, when I was like a young kid. Like, I'd have to be in bed by like 9 o'clock or 9:30, whatever it was. And, you know, that was what it was. But otherwise, I pretty much just had like free reign to do pretty much whatever I wanted, except I was not allowed to play any M-rated games until I was 11. My very first M-rated game, or at least the first one that my parents knew that I played and allowed me to play, was Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 back in 2009. That was the first M-rated game that I owned. The first M-rated game that I played, though, was Grand Theft Auto Liberty City Stories for the PSP, because I had a PSP, my sister had her own PSP, she was, 5 or 6 years older than I was, so she was allowed to play these games that I was not allowed to play. So she had the game, I would sneak into her room when she wasn't there, I would steal the game, put the Grand Theft Auto game into my PSP and play it. And, you know, the great thing about handhelds is that your parents can't really see exactly what you're playing and what you're doing like they could if you were playing, like, on a TV screen. So, yeah, I had a lot of fun back when I was, like, I don't know, like 8 years old, I think, 9 years old maybe, I don't even know. Like, it was a couple of years before I was actually, like, officially allowed to play these M-rated games. You know, the stupid part about it, and, you know, I have nothing but love and respect for my parents, but I thought the stupid thing about it was they let me watch these, like, really, like, violent shows, like Criminal Minds, Law and Order SVU, like, whatever shows that they would watch back then. I was allowed to sit down and watch them with them every single night. So why is it that I'm allowed to watch TV shows that have all this violence in them and have all these terrible things going on, but couldn't play a video game that had that? I think it's just because they're like, oh, you're in control of these actions in a video game, and therefore, you know, you being able to do this in a video game might have a bad influence on you down the line, and, you know, you're so young and impressionable that we can't allow that. I mean, they didn't really go into detail about their reasoning. I think I asked my mom years later, like, why that was a thing. And I think she said, like, that she wanted me to have a childhood and to just enjoy kid stuff and be like a kid and not really get into adult stuff until I was old enough to experience it. And I guess I kind of understand that, like, to a degree, but it still feels arbitrary to me. Like, I don't really see, like, that being a huge thing that would really change my life in a negative way ever. Like, the only way that video games have changed my life in a negative way is, like, being addicted to them. I've struggled with that over the years. Not so much lately, though. I haven't really... over the past, like, 3 or 4 years, my playtime has been so low. Like, I'd say if I put 10 hours a week into video games, that's a lot for me these days. So I no longer suffer from addiction. I didn't necessarily, like, have to get out of having addiction. The addiction was just a symptom of a greater problem in my life where I just want to dissociate myself from the real world, and the video games just happen to be that solution for me, or at least what I thought was a solution. And honestly, 90% of the time when I am playing video games, it's something related to YouTube and making content and trying to, also get some money. So there's some productivity there as well. So I would say all the downsides of playing video games, whether we're talking about addiction, just spending way too much time on playing games and not doing other things that you should be doing or that benefit your life. Like, all that really doesn't really matter if it's an M-rated game. You could be just as addicted with Mario as you would with Call of Duty or whatever, And as far as the other stuff, like becoming desensitized to violence and acting more aggressive in real life because you're playing these video games, none of that stuff has ever been proven in any real scientific studies. Like, it's not really something, it's something that people talk about a lot, but it's something that never actually happens. But as far as, like, nude and stuff like that, then I would say that is something that is a different conversation, because you just don't want your children to be exposed to that kind of stuff. Like, if the female characters have their cleavage hanging out and, whatever, like, I think that's a different conversation. But since most M-rated games don't really have that stuff, I mean, a lot of them do, but most of them it's just shooting people and shooting your way through the level. I mean, I can only think of a handful of examples of games that, like, actually show full, bare nudity. Like, The Witcher 3 is one, and I really can't think of too many other ones, actually, that actually just show it straight up. Now, if we're talking about unrated games, like, I have a game called Pleasure Puzzle that's in my Steam library. I've never played it, never installed it, but it was, like, gifted to me from a friend on Steam. I don't even remember who it was. So, yeah, I guess I do have games like that. I don't play them, even as an adult, as a 25-year-old. Those are just not stuff that... I'm not really interested in playing games like that. And most of them aren't even games, they're just, like, graphic novels or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, I guess in that case, if you have a 7-year-old that says, Daddy, Mommy, I want to play that, and you say no, I think that's completely reasonable, and I would definitely concur with that. But if they just want to play Call of Duty or God of War or something like that, and if they're 5 years old, I don't care. Like, I really don't. Even Mortal Kombat's okay with me, to be honest, because it's all arbitrary. It's not like you're actually, like, showing them a real gore video or something, Like, it's a game. It's supposed to be fake. It's supposed to be virtual fun. Like, stop taking it so seriously, guys. But I don't know. Let me know if I'm crazy in the comments section. Is there something I'm missing here? Am I getting it wrong? Like, am I just, like, completely delusional about this? Because I think it's pretty clear that there's nothing actually wrong with this. It's just people trying to turn nothing into something. And it just doesn't make any sense to me why so many parents are really, like, into this whole thing, because, especially from my own personal experiences, my father, when I was 8 years old, as early as that age, my father wanted to take me out and show me how to kill a deer and, like, actually have me, like, have a real gun and kill an animal in real life and do that, but can't have you doing violence in a virtual world. Like, what? I mean, to be fair, I think that was mostly my mom than my father. I think my father probably wouldn't have cared otherwise unless my mom pushed it, so I think it was just my mom, to be honest. But I was trusted enough to handle a gun at 6 years old. It was Jiminy Cricket, my first rifle, not a toy. I remember they got that for me at Walmart. And yeah, I had a gun when I was 6. I had a gun. And that's not just a fake story. That's me right there. That's me when I was 6 years old. But I couldn't play these fucking video games where you had fake guns. Like, really? So, my situation was very weird. I think most of you can agree with that. But let me know, especially if you're a parent, do you allow your young children to play M-rated games? Because if you didn't allow them to, I really want to know what your reasoning is, because I still don't understand it, and I probably never will.